Welcome to Moonlit Romance Library. Please follow for more stories. Chapter 1: Blood on the Snow. The military parade square of Arventhor smelled like iron in winter. Alara Voss stood at the edge of the square, one gauntleted hand wrapped around the reins of her black warhorse, the other pressed flat against her own thigh to stop the trembling. The trembling was not fear. It was the aftermath of killing 7 men in the border ambush 3 hours ago, the last of whom had driven a serrated blade across her left wrist before she'd taken his throat with her sword pommel. The wound had been wrapped in a torn strip of her own cloak. The blood had frozen into the fabric. She could feel it cracking every time she moved her fingers. Behind her, Noctis, her warhorse, her oldest companion, the meanest animal in the royal stables, snorted and stamped one massive hoof into the snow. He did this whenever he was bored, annoyed, or plotting to bite someone. At present, she suspected all three. "Easy," she murmured. Noctis flattened his ears and tossed his head sideways, yanking the reins hard enough to jolt her injured wrist. She hissed through her teeth. He had the temperament of a drunken tavern brawler and the intelligence of a war strategist, and he had never once in his life been easy about anything. She'd found him 6 years ago in a burned-out border stable, a half-starved yearling with hooves too big for his legs and fury in every line of his body. The stable master had warned her not to go near him. "He bites," the man had said. "He kicks. He'll kill you if you try to saddle him." Alara had walked in anyway, because she'd recognized something in those wild black eyes. She had been 15. She'd had no wolf form, no noble bloodline, no mother, and a father who drank himself to sleep every night in a guardsman's barracks. She understood what it meant to be angry and have no one to explain it to. She'd sat in the corner of his stall for 3 hours. She hadn't touched him. She'd simply sat there eating an apple, and when she was done, she'd placed the core on the ground and left. The next morning, the core was gone. The morning after that, she brought 2 apples. By the 4th day, he'd come close enough to breathe on her hair. By the 7th, he'd let her touch his nose. He'd bitten her on the 8th day, hard enough to leave a scar on her shoulder, and she'd bitten him back. Not literally, but she'd flicked his ear so hard he'd startled backward into the wall. They had understood each other perfectly ever since. Now Noctis shoved his massive head against her back, pushing her forward half a step. He wanted to leave. He had wanted to leave since they'd arrived. Horses were not stupid creatures, whatever the nobles said, and Noctis in particular possessed an uncanny ability to sense when a situation was about to become terrible. But she could not leave, not yet. Ahead of her, the parade square was arranged in the rigid formations of a royal acknowledgement ceremony. The Council of Elders occupied the raised stone dais at the center, 7 ancient werewolves in silver-trimmed black robes, their faces carved into permanent expressions of disapproval. Flanking them were the noble houses, arranged by rank. Fur-lined cloaks, jeweled circlets, gloved hands clasped over embroidered sashes. To the left, the soldiers of the Crown Guard stood in polished rows, breath steaming in the cold. To the right, the court ladies and lesser nobles clustered together like a flock of brightly plumed birds. And in the center of it all, standing on the frost-covered stone with his back to her, was Aldrich. Crown Prince Aldrich Veyron, her fated mate. Even now, even with blood frozen to her wrist and 7 kills sitting heavy in her bones, the sight of him made something twist beneath her ribs. Not the mate bond, though that was there too, that low golden hum that had lived inside her chest since she was 17 and first felt it snap into place. This was older than the bond. This was memory. This was the boy who had pulled her out of a frozen river when she was 12, who had taught her the sword forms the weapons master wouldn't teach girls, who had sat beside her on a parapet at dawn and said, "You don't need a wolf, Alara. You already fight like one." She had loved him since before she knew what the word meant. Aldrich turned. Even across the width of the parade square, she could see how the cold had sharpened his features. The strong jaw, the dark brow, the mouth that was too severe for softness but had once smiled at her like she was the only warmth in the kingdom. His black hair was pushed back from his face, and his golden eyes, wolf eyes always, found her immediately. Something flickered there, pain maybe, or guilt. Noctis snorted again, louder this time, and Alara felt the reins go taut as he shifted his weight. He never liked Aldrich. Even in the early days when she and Aldrich had been inseparable, the horse had regarded the crown prince with the particular disdain of an animal who could smell dishonesty long before it arrived. "Stand," she told him quietly. He stomped, twice. She ignored him because Lady Cordelia Ashworth was stepping forward. Cordelia was beautiful. That had never been in dispute. She had auburn hair that fell in perfect waves, a waist like a drawn bowstring, skin that had never been within spitting distance of a battlefield, and a laugh that sounded like crystal chimes designed specifically to make other women feel inadequate. She was the daughter of Lord Ashworth, the wealthiest nobleman in Arventhor, and she had been presented to the council as a suitable Luna candidate 6 months ago. Around the same time, the whispers about Alara's lack of wolf form had grown too loud to ignore. Cordelia placed her hand on Aldrich's arm. It was a small gesture, delicate, possessive, perfectly calculated. Alara saw it. The entire square saw it. That was, of course, the point. Aldrich did not remove the hand. And then he spoke. "Lady Cordelia has stood faithfully beside the crown during the recent border conflicts," he said, his voice carrying across the parade ground with the practiced ease of a man raised to address armies. "Her devotion to the council's guidance and the traditions of our bloodline is beyond reproach." Beside Alara, Noctis made a sound that could only be described as derisive. She agreed with him, but she kept her face still. She had spent 10 years in this court. She knew how to hold her expression. She knew how to stand with blood soaking through her glove and not let a single person see her flinch. Elder Hargrave, the eldest and most venomous member of the council, leaned forward on the dais. "And what of the knight, Your Highness?" Aldrich's jaw tightened. She saw it, the microflexion, the way his eyes darted toward her and then deliberately pulled away. "The knight?" "Sir Alara Voss." Hargrave's voice was thin and precise, like a needle threading through silk. "Your personal guard. The soldiers report she single-handedly broke the ambush at the Thornwinter Pass this morning. 7 enemy wolves, was it? While the rest of your escort was pinned down?" Silence in the square. The soldiers shifted. Some of them had been there. Some of them had watched her walk into that ambush with nothing but a sword and a warhorse while they cowered behind overturned carts. "She performed her duty," Aldrich said. "Her duty." Alara's fingers tightened on the reins. "Indeed." Hargrave smiled, and it was the smile of a man. Welcome to Moonlit Romance Library. Please follow for more stories. Welcome to Moonlit Romance Library. Please follow for more stories. Seraphine Bramblevine had spent 17 years protecting Prince Lucivar Nightcrown's beautiful face, and it took him less than 17 seconds to pretend none of it had mattered. The Hall of 12 Moons was full when he rejected her. Every alpha family in the kingdom stood beneath the silver arches. Noble women wore heavy velvet gowns embroidered with pack crests. Warriors in formal armor lined the walls. At the far end of the hall, the empty black throne of the Alpha King waited beneath a crown carved from moonstone. His younger brother stood on the lower dais in white and gold, handsome enough to make half the court forgive him before he had even committed the offense. Seraphine had always loved that face. When they were children, Lucivar's fine bones and long gold-brown hair had made him look too delicate for the wrestling yard. Other boys had noticed. They had pushed him into mud, taken his boots, and called him a lamb born in a wolf's den. Seraphine, already stronger than boys twice her age, had put all 3 tormentors into a horse trough and asked Lucivar whether his nose had been damaged. He had stared at her with wet gray eyes and said no. "Good," she had told him. "I like your nose." For years after that, she had stood between him and every fist, insult, and cruel joke. When he grew taller and learned to fight, she trained with him. When his first shift left him feverish, she carried him 3 miles through snow to the healers. When he was afraid to speak before the Southern Pack Council, she sat in the first row and smiled until he remembered every word. She had pursued him openly. She had given him crooked protective charms and praised his hair with an honesty that made him blush. He had accepted her attention, held her hand in private, and once promised that no one would ever make her stand alone in a crowded hall. Now he stood in that very hall and looked through her as if she were an inconvenient pillar. "Lady Seraphine," Lucifer said, loud enough for every noble to hear, "there has been an unfortunate misunderstanding. I have never made a formal mating vow to you." A ripple of whispers crossed the chamber. Seraphine's right hand tightened around the small velvet box she had brought as a gift. Inside it rested the first magic sphere she had ever kept stable for more than a minute. It was no larger than a plum, silver blue and dense enough to crack a stone floor if she lost control. She had practiced for 6 months because she wanted to show Lucifer that her mother's explanation had been true. Her magic was not absent, it was compressed. Lucifer knew that. He had heard her mother explain it when they were children. He had watched Seraphine rise before dawn to train, watched wands split in her grip, watched spells collapse into heavy little balls that rolled through classrooms and shattered furniture. He had told her he believed her. Today, beside him stood Caldrissa Valahart, a highborn witch whose flame magic could fill a ballroom ceiling with golden birds. Caldrissa was lovely in a dark red gown, but her mouth was tense. She did not look at Seraphine. Lucifer continued, "The Southern Territories require a Luna whose magic is already proven. Lady Caldrissa has agreed to stand beside me." Someone near the musicians laughed. "Proven," an older noblewoman repeated. "A practical requirement. One cannot lift a curse by lifting the table." More laughter followed. Seraphine heard the words clearly. She also heard the faint crack inside the velvet box as her magic sphere grew heavier. She had explained herself for years. She had explained that her mother, Mevrian Bramblevane, had never lied about her potential. She had explained that dense magic matured differently. She had explained that strength was not a shameful substitute for witchcraft, but another gift entirely. No one who mocked her had ever wanted an explanation, so she did not give one. "Return the pearl clasp," Lucifer said. His voice lowered, as if gentleness could make the demand less public. "It belonged to my grandmother." Seraphine touched the clasp at her collar. He had fastened it there 2 winters ago after kissing her forehead beneath the old bell tower. He had said it suited the woman who would one day wear his colors. Her chest hurt, not theatrically, not in a way that could be answered with a clever sentence. It hurt with the quiet weight of every morning she had believed they were walking toward the same future. She removed the clasp and crossed the polished floor. Lucifer held out his palm. She set the pearl into it. "You are correct," she said. "You never made a formal mating vow." Relief touched his handsome face too quickly. Seraphine looked at him and remembered a thin boy hiding behind her shoulder. She remembered his hand in hers. She remembered how many times she had defended his courage before he had found it for himself. "But when Lord Petavar put you in a feed barrel at 13, she added, "you promised never to let anyone humiliate me in public." A few people stopped smiling. Lucifer's face tightened. "This is not the time for childhood stories." "No," Seraphine agreed. "Your memory is not as pretty as your face. I should have noticed sooner." The first genuine laugh came from one of the guards. He turned it into a cough when Lucifer glared at him. Seraphine closed the velvet box, slipped it into her pocket, and stepped toward the ceremonial chair on which Lucifer had been sitting before the announcement. It was an absurd object, built from black oak and plated with silver wolves. Her mother had reinforced its legs after Lucifer cracked it during his first uncontrolled shift. Lucifer frowned. "What are you doing?" "Returning another family possession." She grasped the chair beneath both arms. Lucifer had time to look confused before Seraphine lifted the entire chair with him still in it. The Hall of 12 Moons fell silent. She raised him high enough that his boots swung above the floor, turned carefully, and carried him down the center aisle. Lucifer grabbed the carved arms. "Seraphine, put me down." "I intend to." Inside the hall. That detail was not specified. The nearest courtiers scattered. One elderly matron clutched her jeweled cane and laughed so hard she had to lean on a column. Caldrissa covered her mouth. Seraphine could not tell whether she was shocked or trying not to smile. At the open bronze doors, Seraphine set the chair on the outer landing with perfect care. Lucivar remained seated, red-faced and speechless. "Since you do not require my future," she said, "you probably do not require my mother's reinforced furniture either." A low voice behind her said, "Leave the chair, bring the woman back." The command did not need to be loud. Every wolf in the hall felt it. Seraphine turned. The Alpha King had entered through the northern doors without fanfare. Valor Nightcrown wore black silver armor beneath a heavy winter cloak. No skin showed below his throat. His dark hair brushed the collar of his armor, and a thin scar crossed one eyebrow without diminishing the severe balance of his face. He was broader than Lucivar, taller than any man near him, and carried the contained stillness of someone who had never needed to perform strength for a room. Seraphine's grief did something deeply disrespectful. It paused. Her gaze moved from his face to the armored line of his shoulders, then returned to his face because she had standards and intended to examine the better feature twice. Valor stopped 3 paces away. His eyes were a cold, unusual blue. They met hers directly. "Have you finished looking?" he asked. Seraphine considered lying. Her mother had raised her better. "No, Your Majesty, but this appears to be a formal moment, so I can continue later." A shocked sound moved through the court. The king's mouth did not smile, exactly. One corner merely reconsidered its position. He looked past her to Lucivar on the landing. "You received her loyalty for 17 years. Lucivar rose from the chair. "Brother, I can explain. That privilege was available before you invited 12 packs to watch you disgrace her. The Southern Council requires a proven Luna." Valor's gaze returned to Seraphine. "Did you ask her to prove herself today?" Lucivar hesitated. Seraphine answered for him. "No, he asked for his grandmother's clasp." "Efficient," Valor said. "Cowardly, but efficient." Lucivar's jaw hardened. "You have been away at war. You do not understand the pressure here." "I understand pressure. It is the thing that reveals structure. You appear decorative." The guard who had coughed before abruptly studied the ceiling. Valor removed his winter cloak. The heavy black fabric was lined in silver and fastened with the royal wolf crown. He placed it around Seraphine's shoulders. It smelled of cold air, cedar, and the iron halls of the northern fortress. The gesture was protective, but not possessive. He did not touch her throat or pull her against him. He simply made it impossible for anyone in the room to pretend she stood alone. "She has explained her magic for years," Valor said to the court. "You chose not to believe her. That is a failure of your judgment, not of her truth." Seraphine looked up at him. He was even more unfair from this distance. Without turning, he murmured, "Now is still not the time to inspect me." "You are standing very close," she murmured back. "I am being challenged by circumstances." This time she saw the brief movement at the corner of his mouth. Then he faced the hall. "Lucivar has rejected Lady Seraphine Bramblevane. He is free to live with that decision." Caldrissa finally looked at Seraphine. There was relief in her expression, but also shame. Valor's voice deepened. "I claim her under the crown's right of open choice, not as property, not as consolation, as the woman I intend to court before every pack that mocked her." The words struck the hall harder than a roar. Lucivar went pale. Seraphine stared at the king. "You intend to court me?" "Yes." "Because I carried your brother outside?" That improved the morning. It did not create my interest. "How long have you been interested?" "This is still a formal moment." She narrowed her eyes. "Convenient. You may interrogate me later." On the outer landing, Lucivar took one step toward them. Seraphine, do not turn this into revenge. She looked at the man she had loved. The pain returned. It did not disappear because his brother was more handsome. Her heart was not a plate one could replace with a better plate. She had dreamed of Lucivar's hand in hers at this ceremony. She had believed he would be proud of her even before her magic awakened. But when she looked at him now, she also saw what he had chosen. Applause from people who had never carried him through snow, approval from nobles who had laughed when he was weak, and the comfort of a woman whose talents required no courage to defend. I am not doing anything for revenge, Seraphine said. For the first time today, I am considering something for myself. Valor extended his hand. He did not command her to take it. She studied his gauntleted fingers, then his face, then his shoulders again, because emotional injury had not made her blind. If I accept your courtship, she said, I am not agreeing to become queen. Correct. I will continue training. I would be disappointed if you stopped. And if someone insults my mother, I may fight them. Warn the floor stewards first. They have requested fewer broken tables. Mevrienne Bramblevane's voice came from the rear of the hall. She only broke 3 last year. Seraphine's mother walked between the nobles in a dark blue high-collared gown, her silver-streaked hair braided down her back. She was not tall, but the court made space for her as if she carried a storm beneath her skin. Mevrienne stopped beside her daughter and examined Lucivar outside with his displaced chair. You did not strike his face? She asked. It was a formal occasion. Excellent restraint. Then Mevrienne looked at Valor. My daughter is not a prize you won by arriving at the correct dramatic moment. I know. She has loved your brother. Valor's expression did not change, but a colder light entered his eyes. I know that too. She may continue to grieve him even while she finds you attractive. Seraphine closed her eyes. Mother. You were staring. I was wounded. Not in the eyes. A laugh escaped Caldrissa before she could stop it. Mevrienne turned toward the sound. Caldrissa straightened, expecting rebuke. Instead, the older witch said, At least one person beside my daughter is honest today. Valor kept his hand extended. Seraphine placed hers in it. His gauntlet was cool. His grip was careful, far gentler than a man of his size needed to be. For one heartbeat, his thumb moved over her knuckles, a quiet touch